Stage 2 of the Tour de France is in the books, and what a stage we have been treated to today. Before the day started, we knew we had some big climbs with, of course, the Col de la Comiane, as well as the Col de Torini, which could provide some fantastic action, and that certainly came to fruition. So, starting again in Nice, of course, where the riders would also finish, we headed out to the Comiane, where we did have an intermediate sprint. That was won by Matteo Trentin ahead of Peter Sagan. Trentin perhaps becoming a green jersey contender versus Peter Sagan. However, we had Benoit Cosnefroid, we had Michael Gergel, Anthony Perez, Tom Skujins, Lucas Postelberger and Kasper Asgreen joining Peter Sagan up the road to form today's breakaway. They would fight it out for the polka dot jersey, and Benoit Cosnefroid, I do believe, is taking home that jersey and will wear it for stage 3, despite finishing on the same points as Anthony Perez, both on 18 points. They came first and second at the Col de Comiane and the Col de Torini. We then headed towards Nice, where we would have the finishing circuit up the Col d'Ez, where the breakaway were caught on the approach to the first descent of the Col d'Ez with about 40 kilometers to go. And this is where the real action did unfold today. We did have Lennart Kemna, who went down. That's a shame. He's now out of the GC battle. Also, importantly, Daniel Martinez, winner of the Criterium du Dauphiné, fell on the descent. Hugh Carthy did drop back to help him, and he brought him back towards the peloton, and they did make it back in, but Dan Martinez expending way too much energy in that effort to get back into the peloton, and he has lost over 3 minutes today. Big shame for the Colombian and EF Pro Cycling. However, the final ascent up the Col d'Ez, they actually go about 2/3 of the way up, and it was the Koenig Quickstep who came to the front at this stage. Bob Jungels setting a super hard tempo for about the first 2k of the climb, setting up the inevitable Alaphilippe attack. And to our surprise, Marc Hirschi was able to follow the Frenchman, and he was the only rider able to follow Julian Alaphilippe at this stage. Tom Dumoulin did fall as well. I think he had contact with Michał Kwiatkowski, who was immediately apologetic to the Dutchman Tom Dumoulin. He got back in okay though, so no issues there. And following that, we did have Adam Yates with an unbelievable attack, bridging up to Hirschi and Alaphilippe in what seemed like a couple of seconds, bridging a 15-20 second gap to the leads of the race. And crucially, we did have some bonification seconds on top of this climb. And so there was a sprint for it, 8 seconds, 5 seconds, and 2 seconds for first, second, and third. Adam Yates just beating Julian Alaphilippe, who, judging by his facial expressions, was really struggling at this stage. However, Alaphilippe came second and Hirschi came third. Those riders had about a 20-second lead. They worked together fairly well. I think Hirschi was the one failing to do a full turn on the front, and it really was cat and mouse as we came into the final kilometre. Hirschi refusing to go to the front, playing it very cleverly, it must be said, sitting on Alaphilippe, refusing to lead really the two better known riders out. Hirschi has just turned 22, of course, so very, very young rider compared to Alaphilippe and Adam Yates. Alaphilippe unleashed his sprint with about 200 metres to go, the peloton closing in on the 3-man breakaway. Hirschi jumped into Alaphilippe's wheel. He just failed to react in time for me, and he lost a couple bike lengths, which really was crucial because Hirschi's sprint was very, very close to beating Alaphilippe. Sat in his slipstream, he really gained some overspeed on Alaphilippe, but Alaphilippe just quick enough to hold off Marc Hirschi. Yates held on for third place ahead of the chasing peloton, who finished just 2 seconds down on those guys in the end. And Alaphilippe takes stage 2 of the Tour de France in Nice, as well as the yellow jersey. And I think we have to start with the 22-year-old Swiss, Marc Hirschi, as he just turned 22 days before the tour started. This man was in the juniors just a few years ago, and he was strong at the Dauphiné pre-tour. I think he finished in the top 10 on stage 4, the stage Lenny Kemna won from the breakaway. And he does have a strong palmarès to his name already. He was third at the Classica San Sebastian last season, and he also won the Under-23 World Championships road race in 2018. And in that one, he did beat the likes of Lennart Kemna Alex Vlasov and Tadej Pogačar on the day. And for those of you that haven't really heard of Mark Hirschi before, he is the type of rider who performs well on the hilly terrain. I don't think he's really a mountain climber, the 20 kilometer long climbs, but the finishing hills for him today were the perfect length, under 10 kilometers, maybe ranging between that kind of 3 or 4 kilometer up to about 10 kilometer long climbs. Those are the type of climbs that really suit Mark Hirschi. In my opinion, he's a really strong puncher, and I think his parcours and his performance today definitely shows that. I did mention him at the end of yesterday's podcast as a potential rider to watch for today's stage, but I'll be honest, I was taken aback by his performance today. The only rider really who was able to go with Alaphilippe. He didn't quite have the same punch and acceleration as Alaphilippe, which obviously is to be expected, but he seemed to have no major issues staying with Alaphilippe and then Yates in the duration of that climb. And I was also very impressed with his mentality today. He really did show kind of experience beyond his years, and he was very clever in the finish. Very, very inexperienced, of course, compared to Alaphilippe and Adam Yates, who have both obviously been in contention for big stage wins before. And he really did play it cool in the final. He refused to be the man to lead the other two riders out. He didn't do too much work on the front. He pulled through, didn't do a long turn on the front, and he really played it clever, sat on Alaphilippe, made Yates do the lead out, and it almost worked for Mark Hirschi today. What a talent Someweb have in Mark Hirschi. So we'll look at EF Pro Cycling next, and a very mixed day for them because Sergio Higuita, he did well finishing in the top 5. I think he was second just behind Greg Van Avermaet in the mass sprints. So clearly, again, his strong sprints on show today, only to be just beaten by Van Avermaet. And to put that in perspective, Higuita is 1.66 meters and 57 kilograms, according to Pro Cycling Stats. So not the kind of usual sprinter build, very much a climbing build right there, but he really has a massive kick in the final, and he is definitely a big danger for a stage win at this Tour de France. Bettiol was also strong for EF in that front group, as well as Rigoberto Urán, but as we know, the big loss for EF today comes in Daniel Martinez losing a bunch of time, a real shame for the Colombian. After his fall, I think he had a mechanical as well on the Col de Turini. And in the end today, he lost 3 minutes and 38 seconds. So most likely he is now out of the GC battle. Going to be difficult for him to get really back into that battle from this position. I think EF will really favour Rigoberto Urán. Maybe they can get Martinez in some breaks to try and haul him back into kind of the main mix of the GC guys, but probably I can see Martinez having to go in the breakaway for stage wins and in the end losing time in the GC so he can do that. So a bit disappointing for me to see Martinez lose that time today because I really think he had the strength to really put up a decent fight for at least the top 10 in the GC. Bit of a shame for Martinez, the winner of the Dauphiné, and I do believe 5 of the last 10 winners of the Dauphiné have then gone on to win the Tour de France a month later. So it doesn't seem that'll be the case this season. Also, quick note on Mitchelton Scott, because we know Adam Yates, a fantastic ride today, and I'm still getting over that attack from Adam Yates. Up to Hirschi and Alaphilippe, he closed what was at least a 10-second gap, more like 15 seconds to those guys in literally no time at all. Marc Soler tried to follow and he was immediately caught and dropped by the peloton. Adam Yates so strong, and he said before the race he was going to try and focus on stage wins, and this performance today really does make me question, is that the right decision for Adam Yates and Mitchelton Scott, or should they just try and keep their options open in this first kind of week to 10 stages, see how Adam Yates performs and then maybe decide, okay, we can go for stage wins from here. Or if he's still in a decent position in the GC, Adam Yates looking very strong and in similar form to when he won the UAE Tour, attacking ahead of the likes of Lutsenko and Tadej Pogačar at that race. Also good to see Esteban Chavez finishing with the peloton. He's had a difficult few seasons, has the little Colombian. So Esteban Chavez finishing 12th today. Very, very positive news for Mitchelton Scots. On to Bora Hansgrohe, and I really think Bora Hansgrohe are going to be so happy with this first couple of stages of the Tour de France. Sagan didn't really perform in the finishing sprint yesterday, but he's looking good in that green jersey, picking up more points in that competition today. And when we look at Schachmann and Emmanuel Buchmann, both of those riders were big question marks coming into the race, both with falls in the lead up. We have Buchmann falling at the Dauphiné, and he had said before the Tour de France he was going to give it a go, but still wasn't feeling fantastic. So great to see Buchmann finishing comfortably in that front group. It seems he was 26th today. And Schachmann in the top 10. This stage would really usually suit Maxi Schachmann in my opinion. He has a great punch over some hills. And today's performance for Schachmann taking place 15 days to the day after he broke his collarbone at Il Lombardia in that absolutely absurd accident with the vehicle on course. So Schachmann is going to be feeling great. What a performance by him today. He's recovered super fast from that injury, whilst Buchmann looking very good to have a real go at the GC. And the final team I want to really touch on today is the Koenig Quickstep, and of course Julian Alaphilippe taking the stage win. As we know, he's dedicated that win to his father, who did sadly pass earlier this year. So wonderful to see Alaphilippe achieve this win and dedicate it to his father. And Alaphilippe, is he again a danger in the GC? He looks in good form. He looks in fantastic shape after, to me, not looking quite in the form he had early 2019 in the build-up to this Tour de France. He wasn't great at the Dauphiné, and Alaphilippe really can hold on to that jersey tomorrow without any issues, I would assume. We have a fairly flat stage tomorrow, more of a transitional day for the GC contenders. However, stage 4 into Ossier-Malette, we have a 10.4 kilometre climb at around 6%, almost going up to 2,000 metres. That'll be Alaphilippe's next major test. And I did see one quote that I absolutely loved after the race on Twitter. Dries Stevenens, who did ride on the front of the peloton the first time up the Col d'Ez, and he quoted to Eurosport saying, "I pulled over to the side of the roads to watch Julian's victory on a spectator's phone. I shouted." So you absolutely love to see stuff like that. Stevenens playing a role in Alaphilippe's win and then witnessing it with the fans on the side of the roads. So quickly, let's take a look at some of the riders that were dropped from today's peloton. Notably, David Gaudu lost, I think, 17 minutes. He seems to be really struggling with his shape after a fall yesterday, and really a tricky build-up to the Tour de France. George Bennett and Sepp Kuss lost a couple minutes each. No major surprise right there. Soler lost a minute. Fabio Aru lost 2 minutes. We've already mentioned Daniel Martinez and Leonard Kemner lost 10 minutes. The only other surprises to me are Warren Barguil and Ilnur Zakarin, who both lost a fair chunk of time today. It seems they will be aiming for stage wins in the breakaway. So breaking news coming actually away from the Tour de France. However, very much linked in my opinion. We have Michael Matthews leaving Team Someweb at the end of the season. He was meant to be contracted to the team until the end of 2022. So the following 2 seasons after the end of this season. So that is a big loss for Someweb. Clearly a rider in form before the Tour de France, and that has to be linked to him not being selected for this season's tour. Still an absolutely puzzling decision for me. So a great day for Someweb at the tour with Hershey's result, but a big loss for the team, in my opinion, losing Michael Matthews at the end of the season. And hopefully he is able to go to a team that really are able to support him in the biggest races of the year. Okay then guys, let's take a look ahead to stage 3, where we will be leaving Nice for the final time in this race, the 3rd day in a row, and we're heading to Sisteron, where it's a fairly strange profile to me. Usually I would suggest a stage that looks like this could go down to the breakaway. However, with limited sprint stages really available to the sprinters at this year's race, I think the major sprinters teams, Quickstep, NTT, Lotto Soudal, they will try and control this so it comes in for a mass sprint. However, saying that, we do have some fairly sizable climbs early on. We first have the Col de Pilon, which is 8.4 kilometers at over 5%. Also, the Col de Lec at 7.1 kilometers, 5.4%. And they are sizable climbs. They are some way from the finish, over 100k from the finish line. But if some sprinters teams want to maybe put some of their fellow sprinters that are struggling on the climbs in some difficulty, they certainly have the opportunity to try that. And really, the main question mark for me is Caleb Ewan. We know he struggled on stage 1 of the race. He got back into the peloton mainly because of the rider neutralization on the downhill. He really struggled on those climbs though, and he was actually the last rider to cross the line today into Nice. Not a big kind of sign that he's struggling. Of course, he's conserving energy for tomorrow. However, Caleb Ewan, I have question marks over whether he can make it over these climbs in the peloton. And I really feel that teams such as NTT, maybe the likes of CCC, and even Trek Segafredo, who have some strong sprinters, real classics men in Stuyven, Pedersen and Edward Toons, they could really push the tempo and try and put Caleb Ewan in some difficulty. And that is, of course, a major contender, probably the favourite for the stage on paper out the back. So we'll see if Caleb Ewan is there tomorrow to compete for the sprints. And so prediction time, who's going to take it out of the main sprinters? I'm going to go for Giacomo Nizzolo myself. He's never won a Grand Tour stage. He's had countless second and third places at the Giro before and the other Grand Tours as well. And I'm really rooting for Nizzolo to win at least one stage at this Tour de France. And I think tomorrow's stage pretty much suits him perfectly. He finished very strongly as well on stage 1. He was coming very quickly. However, he was just blocked off by Bol and Pedersen. So let's see if Nizzolo can get the job done tomorrow. Anyhow, guys, that'll be it from me today. I hope you enjoyed this recap analysis of stage 2 and little look ahead to stage 3 tomorrow here at the 2020 Tour de France. Really, the race exploded into life today. I enjoyed today's stage so much, especially after really a difficult first stage with lots of crashes and of course that terrible weather. Really happy with a fantastic stage 2 today, and I cannot wait for stage 3 tomorrow. Leave a good review and make sure you follow/subscribe if you enjoyed the podcast today. I'll see you guys in the next one.